Yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Karen Gourdet. I'm a Ward 5 resident. Tonight is not just about zoning. It is about consent, accountability, and whether Lakewood is governed by the voters or by the staff. Over the past year, we have watched a pattern unfold in this city, not a sudden crisis, but the predictable outcome of years of institutional drift and eroded accountability. Major land use decisions pushed through with almost no public support, financial decisions made without transparency, and a referendum process obstructed by city staff. Not necessarily the city clerk, but staff took 18 days to approve the initial referendum petition, including 3 days to determine whether we could spiral bind versus staple an almost 300-page document. Then, once the city was notified that we had 75% of the signatures needed, a campaign finance violation was filed, and then new forms were suddenly required. For months, staff and a few councilors insisted the zoning overhaul was widely supported, that the public was informed, that the data was clear, and yet those same decisions were justified starting with the strategic housing plan on the basis of surveys with approximately 500 responses. Do you know what the voters thought about that? Because of our validation process and master database, we know more than 6,000 unique registered Lakewood voters signed 4 separate referendums in a matter of weeks. No paid canvassers, no consultants, no polling firms, no PACs, no glossy mailers, just neighbors. From north to south, renters and homeowners, Republicans and Democrats, blue hair to silver sneakers, and everything in between. That's not a small group spreading misinformation. That is called an electorate. In fact, when this began, I told Councilor Lowe, people were madder than hornets. And then I came back a few days later and corrected that. And I said, they are madder than a forest fire in August with high winds, and for good reason. They were ignored, they were mocked, they were dismissed as fringe. Councilor Lowe even dressed up as a duplex for Halloween to make fun of his own constituents in the middle of a land use dispute. But the most revealing moment came at the January 12th meeting when Councilor Lowe was extremely disrespectful in how he spoke to the city clerk. He asked whether voters could run a referendum on a crazy ordinance such as banning coffee in Lakewood, and the city clerk answered correctly, yes, because the charter protects the voters' veto power. And then Councilor Lowe asked, can we change that? And the answer to that is no, Councilor Lowe, you cannot change that. Only the voters can. The charter belongs to the voters, not to council, not to staff, and not to the city manager. That is how home rule works. That is how democracy works. And that is why the referendum prevailed. In fact, the charter is also clear on what the ballot language must be if this goes to a special election. And I quote, so that shenanigans can't be pulled around the wording, the ballot for the referred ordinance shall be printed on the the ordinance title and the submission clause, and on separate lines under the submission clause, the words in all capitals for the ordinance, and again in all capitals against the ordinance. So then, on January 13th, Councilor Lowe posted to Facebook, check out the new Make Lakewood Livable Facebook page in their newly launched website. We are virtually certain to have a special election later this spring. Maybe he should stay off of social media. Then on January 14th, while staff and a few councilors were working through consultants' surveys, a coordinated email campaign was sent out claiming that Lakewood housing policy is on the ballot, and the voters are already there. Speaking of coordinated campaigns, Kip Kolkmeyer, in his campaign finance complaint against the referendum petitioners, stated, coordinated effort and electioneering communication. So maybe someone should file a campaign finance violation against him since it was his issues committee that sent out the email. Or instead, is this a violation of the open meeting law? Meanwhile, staff continues to behave as if the zoning has already gone into effect, even though the referendum stopped it. We have watched the planning department bypass or ignore required processes. Two examples. One is the fencing issue at Royce Industries. And the Action Center is already moving in and remodeling Emory Elementary, even though that use is not allowed under the 2012 zoning code. How many other examples are there? We've watched assumptions been made about uses that are not right under the 2012 code. We have watched public hearings and due process treated as obstacles instead of obligations. And then came the $42 million Tabor ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court, a ruling that exposed a systematic failure of governance in Lakewood. Taken together, these actions resulted in financial loss, legal exposure, democratic exclusion, procedural shortcuts, poor community outreach, and a culture of contempt toward the very people who live here. This did not happen overnight. It happened for years because council stopped governing and started rubber stamping. Staff dictated, council complied, and voters were cut out entirely. Tabor corrected that at the state constitutional level. The referendum corrected it at the municipal level, and tonight you have the opportunity to correct it at the governance level. The referendum demonstrated that Lakewood is engaged and they are no longer complacent, and that it will exercise its rights when necessary. There is no special interest here other than Lakewood itself. The petition signers remain present in this process. They live here, they vote here, and they expect to be heard. The voters want to have their say, and the only choice before you is whether you respect that or resist that. Send the voting to the ballot, fire the city manager with cause, and return this city to the people who live here. Thank you.
Thank you.